Welcome to the Dispense Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Sven Hosford. Dispense Magazine brings you news and information for patients and physicians about medical marijuana. Whatever you and your doctor might talk about, that's what we'll talk about on this podcast. With this episode, we start a series called Cannabis Conversations. Solevo Wellness in Pittsburgh hosts this series of discussions about medical marijuana. This is part one of our conversation with Dr. Adam Rothschild and holistic practitioner Mandi Babkes as we discuss medical marijuana for the first-time user, recorded live in front of an audience on August 30th, 2018. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sven Hosford, and we are here at the very first of a series of podcasts we're doing here at Solevo Wellness in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the series is going to be called Cannabis Conversations. So we want to make this as conversational as possible. Feel free to jump in with questions at any point, and we'll try to make it as conversational as we can up here. I'm with Dispense Magazine, and that is going to be available here starting in October. You'll be able to pick it up here at Solevo Wellness and many of the other dispensaries and doctors' offices, including, I'm sure, Dr. Rothschild will be carrying it in his office. So let me introduce our panel. It's Dr. Rothschild is a Pennsylvania medical marijuana certified physician who is also board certified in family medicine. He is the founder and physician of PGH MMJ. So if you know your initials, you know what he does. It's a boutique medical cannabis practice located in Pittsburgh's East Liberty neighborhood. And he's certified over 500 patients of all ages for medical cannabis and for full spectrum of serious medical conditions covered by the Pennsylvania Medical Marijuana Program. So he's walking the talk and talking the walk. And next to me we have Mandi Babkes. And she is a board-certified holistic health and nutrition practitioner. She's a proprietor of Holistic Health with Mandi. That's Mandi with an I. Her practice incorporates a number of natural healing and disease prevention and detoxification processes and techniques, including CBDs, of which she's one of the local experts, I would say. Can we call you an expert?
Sure.
Okay, good. So before we get started in all of this, we want to let our host, Solevo Wellness, say a couple of things about what they're doing here. I think this is a really, really interesting facility, and we're going to hear from Patrick on the first topic, which is going to be your commitment to holistic health. Tell me about that, and how did that come about?
Sure. Thank you, Sven. First, I want to just say that we're very excited here to do this podcast with you and Dispense Magazine. We think it's going to be a fantastic way to get the word out about different subjects in the medical marijuana realm as well as the holistic health area. So we're very excited.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to doing these too.
Yeah. So we're not just focused on medical marijuana here. We believe that's one part of the journey, I guess, in people's treatments. We really feel that it's more than just taking a medication. It's about diet. It's about exercise. It's different types of techniques with your mind, stuff like that, to keep you healthy all around. So what we're going to do here at Solevo and what we're doing is offering free events at our location that deal with, say, yoga or meditation or acupuncture, something like that, and also have people come in and talk about these things that aren't just medical marijuana focused.
Yeah. We should say that this is being held in a room right next to your main entrance, so you do not need to have a medical marijuana card to get into your free events here.
That's correct.
That's great. Correct. That's great. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah. We have other events coming up. Obviously, with you, we have some lined up.
All right. Do we want to announce our next podcast here?
Yeah, sure. On September 24th, Monday, same time, 7 to 9, we are having a medical marijuana for pain management as well as addiction. So you want to feel free to talk
we're going to
have,
this is actually going to be a lot of fun too. We're going to have Dr. John Metcalf, whose addiction is very close to his heart. And we're going to have a medical Qigong doctor who actually has A few people, I cleared this with him, a few people can volunteer to come up and get some acupuncture. He has a protocol where we put needles in your ears.
Oh, great.
I know. And it actually does, it's really good for calming and for addictions. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well.
Excellent.
So September 24th. And then, of course, we'll record it for podcasts. So if you're listening to this in the years to come, you can look for that podcast as well.
Yes, and we will be pushing it out to several platforms.
All right, thanks, Pat. We'll be back with you a couple more times here, talk about some more things about Solevo. But let's get into the topic here. We want to start with what beginners should know, what first-time users should know, what Dr. Rothschild likes to call the naive patient would like to know. You're the one that came up with this topic, Dr. Rothschild. So why don't you tell me about what your thinking was about who is this podcast designed for?
Absolutely. So one thing that I should say is that of all the almost 600 patients at this point I've certified, only about 5% of these patients have never used cannabis before in their lives. But it is that 5% of patients who really need the most education and handholding through the process. So the first thing that I tell or I discuss with a patient who's never used any form of cannabis before is that, contrary to a myth that seems to be circulating out there, is that just because it's called medical cannabis doesn't mean that it won't get you high. Anything with THC in it, if you use enough of it, and not really all that much, if you're taking it, if it's anything other than like a topical application, you're going to get THC in your system, and it has a potential, and most likely will get you at least a little bit high. So that is the first thing that I tell patients. And believe it or not, I've had patients, after I've told them that, say, "Oh, you know what? I don't think I want to go through with this. I didn't know that," and they've walked out. But most of them will still stick with it. After that, what I attempt to do is try to explain what it feels like to be under the influence of cannabis. It's one of those things that kind of had to be there thing, but I will explain to patients. There are certain aspects of being under the influence of cannabis that are somewhat universal, and these include the short-term memory issues, loss of sense of time a bit, being much more interested in things that otherwise you wouldn't necessarily think about. These are really...
Jazz is suddenly much more interesting to listen to.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. And it sounds funny to those of us, who maybe had our first experience in high school or whatnot, but when you have a patient who is in their mid-70s or mid-80s or early 90s, as the case has been, this is important stuff. This is important stuff to know. So that's the first thing.
Well, you say this is about 5% of the patients.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the first things that I tell them. And after that, after I've explained what it's like, I try to lay the groundwork for them to have the best possible first experience. So in the traditional world of psychedelics, and cannabis isn't, you can argue whether it's a psychedelic or not, but people talk about set and setting. Set meaning mindset, and setting meaning your physical surroundings. So I always try to encourage patients that the first time that you use cannabis, well, let me take a step back. The most disconcerting side effect for any patient using cannabis can be the paranoia that sometimes comes, and patients need to know that it is a possibility. And so generally, what I try to prepare patients for is to minimize that possibility the first time that they're using cannabis. So again, we talk about set and setting. Set, I tell patients the first time that you're using cannabis, you want to do it on a day when you're having an average day. You don't want to do it on a day when your dog just died or something horrible just happened. You want to go with a reasonably healthy as possible for you mindset. So that's the first thing. And then setting. I always tell patients you want to be in a comfortable environment, probably most likely your own home, your own living room. I tell them if you enjoy having the lights dimmed, dim the lights. If you enjoy listening to music, put on your favorite music. Just because it's medicine doesn't mean you can't enjoy the experience also.
That seems to be a common problem with a lot of doctors is doctors think, having a good time is a bad side effect to medicine.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that's what's unique about cannabis, which is that what I've said before, is that every medicine has side effects. Is it really such a horrible thing if one of the main side effects is, you're more peaceful and everything is more interesting to you? I don't see how that should be a problem.
Exactly.
So I think that's a different mindset about cannabis versus other medicines in general. There are many ways of thinking about cannabis from a physician's mindset that make it peculiar. But getting back to the first time patient, the other important thing that I tell patients the first time that they're going to use cannabis is that you really want to do it with somebody who's there with you. Somebody's there who knows that you might get paranoid and that they can be there to talk you down. And if I always try to encourage them, if I ask them, do you have a family member or a friend who's a cannabis user? That's the ideal person to have with you the first time, assuming they're also a reasonably responsible person. But it's not too hard to find. So these are the main things that I tell the first time medical cannabis patient.
Are there what do you find most of these people are most anxious about? These are the first timers. Let me ask a two-part question.
Yeah.
What are they anxious about or apprehensive about, and what should they be apprehensive about?
So, especially older patients are apprehensive about whether this is going to make them more likely to fall, for example. With alcohol. Obviously, you drink a little too much alcohol, you lose your balance. While cannabis can decrease your coordination a little bit, it's not nearly the same effect that alcohol can have. So that's a really big one.
Okay.
And I forgot the second part of the question.
What are they anxious about, and what should they
be
anxious about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
nothing really.
Yeah,
the idea is to try to not be anxious about it.
And everybody's different, and everybody tolerates and handles it differently. And Sorry. I think that, people are afraid because it's carried a stigmatism for so many years. I mean, it's always carried a stigmatism. It's always been considered a drug. It's always been, if you watched movies, it always makes you, out of this world, and it doesn't really have that impact. So it's scary. And for older patients, and even younger patients, but for older patients, there's definitely a stigmatism. So I don't think that I'm spacing on the question too, but I don't think there's anything that they should be. I think everybody handles anything differently, and if we go into something, it's like the placebo effect. Then you're going to be afraid and you're going to be nervous, and instead it's just to take it step by step, and also have the guidance from us or from somebody at the dispensary to really cater to what your ailments or what you need and what you require, and less is more with it. So you always start with a small amount.
We'll get into that.
One more quick thing. So, Mandi, you brought up an important point that I forgot to mention before, which is the other piece of advice that I give patients going into it the first time is I always tell them that, okay, I can't promise that this is going to help you. Like any other drug, there's not every drug works for every patient, but to go into it with the mindset that this is likely going to help you, and whether you call it placebo, it's part of what contributes to the placebo effect, but that's also helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now let's get into it. I think I know what you're going to ask, but let me. Hey, Becca, could we get the microphone over here to this gentleman? One of the areas I wanted to talk about next was the other 95%, the people that have, at some point in their past, been a flower child or something like that. And what should those beginning users need to know? Is that basically where you're going to go with the question?
No.
Never put questions in anybody's mouth.
I was going to get around to that, but the question I have is something that you might be able to answer. When I was learning about medical marijuana or marijuana back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they said it was not addictive, but it could be psychologically addictive. I wanted to know what you think about that now.
That is actually something people should be apprehensive about, yeah.
Oh, that's true. And actually, I do always tell patients that as well. So thank you for reminding me that.
Good.
Because they are apprehensive about that, and I forgot about that. Probably because I don't worry about it. So maybe that answers your question. But the way that the cannabinoid receptors work and the endocannabinoid system works is you cannot get physically addicted to cannabis. So that part we know for sure. Now, as far as people can get psychologically dependent on cannabis, meaning they feel they can't go on with their normal day-to-day, whatever they do, without being under the influence of cannabis. This is not really any different from any other type of compulsion that people might have. I mean, it's a similar type of psychological mechanism. So it's not an actual biochemical addiction. There are neural pathways at work, but it's not an actual addiction.
Let's move over to Mandi here and talk about CBDs. You're our resident CBD expert. Most people know now that you can't get high from it, but it's more than just a watered down version of medical marijuana. It is actually its own medicine with its own set of circumstances, procedures, everything like that. What are some of the first time users? What kind of questions do you get?
One of the main questions is, will I get high? Will it show up in a drug test? What does it do? And CBD is really, associated with cannabis. I mean, it is part of the cannabis plant. It is the hemp plant. It accentuates and can complement THC as well, and hybriding them together can really be a beautiful combination for healing. But it does have many properties and many qualities and many healing properties that are essential. So it really works with the cell receptors, with the receptors in the body. So we have CB1. I'll talk a little bit about the endocannabinoid system. We have a
That's
system.
That's part two.
I know, but I'm going to talk about how it impacts.
Okay.
So the CB1 and CB cell receptors, CBD impacts each and every cell receptor in the body. So can I move into it a little bit?
Can go.
I mean, I don't
Go
need to
ahead.
really move into it completely, but
We don't want to overload people with too much of the science of it, but yeah.
So, but what does it do just in a general?
Right.
Okay, so I like to explain it that it really impacts the parasympathetic nervous system as well as the sympathetic. So if we look at that, it will help us with pain receptors, with what we feel. It can also turn on and stimulate and heal those emotional properties, psychological, panic, anxiety. It's a very broad question.
Right.
And without getting into the specifics of, they are phytocannabinoids. They are, but it does not carry THC. So it will not get you high. Although there are formulas out there that may have traces of THC. And that's not a question that I do get often is, will it show up in a drug test? So I think it's really important to know where you're deriving your CBD from.
You read the notes, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, I talk about this, but I did. Where you're deriving it from, because just like any other herb or supplement on the market, there's a lot of mass production of these herbs. We don't really know that they're the real thing. We don't know where they're grown. It's very important to have third-party testing to see that it is pure, that it isn't carrying any toxicity, any pesticides, anything that's going to inhibit its potency but also harm us. It does have properties that are, antibacterial, antifungal. So if we're going to put something that's toxic in our body, we want to put the purest in.
This is, I think, another big distinction between the medical marijuana that's sold here at Solevo and the CBDs, which every vape store basically has, is those three things. It's like the growing and processing. Where was it done? How was it done? The testing of it, and
the process.
The processing, especially.
Right.
Now,
so like how did
here, all of that is tightly controlled under the very strict laws under the medical marijuana program. But these CBDs, there's certain questions, if you're going to go in and buy it someplace, there's certain questions you need to ask from that.
Right.
Now, you're a health practitioner.
Yeah,
so
and I'm really particular always about what I use with my patients and the CBD as well. So I work with a pharmaceutical grade compounded bioidentical pharmacy. that is small, that all of the CBD is made there. It's third-party tested. I know that it's grown organically in the United States. And so it really mimics the body, because we want to turn on the body just as it should be with whatever we're putting into it. Now, when we go and we look on Amazon and we see all of these CBDs that are being, for sale, and they might be $100 cheaper or $20 cheaper than something else you see. I'm not saying that cost always makes it better, but, there's a lot of mass production and a lot of counterfeit out there, and we don't know what is being made. I will tell you that 99% of the supplements out on the market today are mass produced, bound, they're synthetic, they're not what they say that they are. This is why,
And this isn't just for CBD.
This is
not
just
across
for,
the board nutritional
right,
supplements.
across the board, right. Yeah. And so you're not really getting what it says, and you could be harming yourself more than doing good. So it's really, important, again, to question and know where your CBD is coming from, or where anything is really coming from. Right. I meet a lot of people that haven't gotten results from CBD, and then they use a CBD that I use, and I bring it in with my practice, with my patients, and they do see results. So again, it's the quality, and you don't always need a lot of it. It's just like medical cannabis. You can start small, and it's important to know and to question and to know what you're getting, and to not always look at the price tag, because if you're going to take something that's $30, but you're going to go through a bottle and wonder why it's not working, you may as well spend $100 on something that's going to last you 2 months, because you're only taking a half of an ml of it and you instantly get results. So something to be said about topical CBD, that's another aspect is, I look at the body holistically, obviously. The skin is our largest organ. We don't only want to sedate and take care of the symptoms like a pain cream, but we want to actually get into the cell receptors of the body and of the skin, and it is our largest cell. So when we use a pure cannabidiol oil that doesn't carry, and that's another thing I should say too, side note, a lot of these formulas of CBD have a lot of carrier oils. So you'll see cannabidiol, MCT, sunflower, menthol, all of these other ingredients. So those are carrier oils, and you're not getting the potency and you're not really getting pure cannabidiol oil. So when you take pure cannabidiol oil, that's all you need. You don't need to have coconut oil and you don't need to have all those oils. So again, with the topical, when we use a pure cannabidiol oil, it doesn't just take care of a sore ankle or inflammation on the specific area, but it will seep into the largest organ of the body, the skin, and it will, turn on and heal, from the outside in, just as we do from the inside out. So I like to, it's not like a Bengay or, even a Tiger Balm that we're not Band-Aiding, we're actually turning on and taking care of the whole entire body.
Great. Let's go back to Dr. Rothschild. This is a nice, juicy subject for you too. Can you give a little bit of an overview of the different delivery systems, wax, oil, butter? A lot of people just starting out, and even some of the former flower children probably don't know how to dab or what a dab is.
Right.
I'm not teasing you too much over there, am I? Okay, good.
No, it's funny. I mean, that comes up a lot, where I'll have people say, I used to smoke weed in the 70s, or I've been smoking weed for years, and then I start to tell them about what the various forms are. They're like, I didn't even know the technology has changed, basically. So
well, and the potency's gone up quite a bit too.
Quite a bit too, right? I mean, the cannabis that you would get in the 70s was maybe 5% THC, somewhere in that range. Now it's regularly 15 to 25% THC, just for flower, or dry leaf. Sorry.
Yeah. Are we allowed to call it flower or not?
I think we are.
Oh, okay.
I think we are. Yeah. We're not selling it.
We'll ask Solevo. They should know. Yeah.
We can. As part of a consultation, I'll always explain to patients what the various forms of cannabis that are available in Pennsylvania. And the way that I describe it, I go from the most medical seeming to the least medical seeming. And so there are capsules, which are pills you'd swallow like any other pill. I always explain to patients that it's the same effect as eating an edible, just doesn't taste as good. Nobody ever laughs at that joke, but I continue to use it. I think it's funny, so I continue to say it.
Keep saying it.
And So the capsules, that would be an oral delivery mechanism. With the oral delivery mechanism, the onset of action is generally within 1 to 2 hours, though it can be highly variable. And duration can be 6 to 12 hours, depending on dose and metabolism, recent meals eaten, this and that kind of thing. Okay. So oral forms, and I'll talk about some other oral forms that are available. Oral forms they can, for patients who have just baseline chronic pain, it can oftentimes be helpful for that, especially nighttime, because the duration is so long. Mm-hmm. I've found that a lot of the older patients seem to be more comfortable with a capsule, because it's a mechanism, it's a form they're familiar with. Sure. I try to dissuade them from that initially, because, especially first-time users, because it's hard to titrate or adjust up the dose with the oral form. Everybody who has been using cannabis for a while has a story about how they overdid it one day with edibles, and it can be no different with the oral dose form. If you take too much from an oral perspective, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day. So I try to dissuade first-time patients from going initially with the oral form, but sometimes it's what you have to do. So those are the capsules. There are topicals, which are lotions, creams, ointments that you apply to the skin, generally that don't have systemic absorption. Some patients with arthritic pain, sometimes neuropathies, these can be sometimes useful. Not everybody has great results with these, but there's little harm in trying. So it's just a financial outlay.
Now, on the topicals, is it true that you don't generally get a high from that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. I mean, there are some, there are now transdermal patches that are available, whether you call it a topical or not. I think they're listed on the menus. Topicals.
It goes in through the skin, though.
Yeah, that's a different preparation that does a systemic absorption. But generally speaking, the topicals are not systemically absorbed.
Okay.
So then there are tinctures, which are liquid preparations that are taken under the tongue. Different companies make different packaging. Some of them are with you apply it with a medicine dropper under the tongue or a spray bottle. Tinctures can also be added to like a drink, for example, and so you could turn it into an oral dose form as well. But when they're taken under the tongue, the onset of action is within generally about 15 minutes. Depending on whether it's an alcohol-based tincture or some type of glycerin oil-based tincture, the alcohol ones are a bit quicker onset. But the duration of action for tinctures is anywhere, generally 3 to 4 hours, something like that. Again, there's some variability there because whenever you do a sublingual under the tongue application, there is going to be some oral absorption, so it's a little bit mixed there. If for first-time patients, if they're not willing to inhale, I try to get them to go with the tincture actually, primarily because the onset of action can be within about 15 minutes and the duration is not too long. They can start with a little bit. If they're not feeling relief after, say, 15 minutes or half hour, they can take a little bit more. And it's quicker than with the oral form.
And it's measured out. You can see specifically exactly how much you're taking. So it's a lot easier, I think, than to ramp up as you move forward.
Correct. Okay. So those are tinctures. Then there are oils available. Those popular form of cannabis in Pennsylvania and in America right now are pre-filled vape pen cartridges. This is with a cannabis distillate or concentrated hash oil, as they call it. And this is the form that I recommend for most patients if they're looking for a recommendation, or for first-time patients if they are willing to inhale. The reason why I like this particular form is that the onset of action is quick, generally within about 5 or so minutes, and the duration is 2 hours, give or take. So this makes it easy to use a pharmacology principle 101, which is start low and go slow. Everyone will tell you that. And so you can take a little hit, wait 5 or 10 minutes, see how you're feeling. If you're not where you want to be, hit it again. You get a sense of it, and that way also, if you happen to overdo it, it's 2 or so hours. You haven't just ruined your day. So that's the pre-filled vape pen cartridges. Rick Simpson oil is also a form that's available. Rick Simpson oil is a thick liquid. It's sold in syringes. This form can be useful. I mean, this form, it's a very versatile form of cannabis. It can be taken orally. It can be taken under the tongue. It's also because it's already because of the way that it's made, the THC that's present has already been activated or decarboxylated, so that you can actually if you wanted to make your own edibles, you can take Rick Simpson oil, mix it right into a recipe, and you don't have to bother with making your own canna butter or something like that. So that's a useful form. Some Rick Simpson oil got its start by this guy Rick Simpson, who insists that he cured his cancer with it. Cannabis has been shown in vitro to have some anti-neoplastic activity. I would love, if it's true that cannabis can cure cancer, I'm not willing to commit to that just yet, though.
Right. Yeah.
So there's Rick Simpson oil. Then as of about 3 weeks ago at this point, now good old-fashioned flour is now available.
Right.
In Pennsylvania, flour is only legally permitted to be vaporized and not to be smoked. Patients always ask me, well, how would they know? The answer is they probably wouldn't. But using flour, vaporizing flour, is a really great way to go. Not only because it's natural, but it has, again, onset of action is within about 5 minutes. Same as using a pre-filled vape pen cartridge. So then finally onto what I call the connoisseur grade concentrates. Mm-hmm. These are your wax, shatter, live resin, butter, batter, sugar. All of the things that people would traditionally do dabs with. When I say the word dab, sometimes I'll say, "Do you know what a dab is?" And they'll all go like, "Oh, like this." I'm like, "No." I have a hypothesis about why that dance move became to be called a dab, but I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's true, but they are related in my mind.
I think it's a good theory.
In my mind, okay.
You always do that dance move as soon as you take a dab.
Exactly, whether you want to or not.
Right. I probably won't now.
So these are all forms with very high THC concentrations. Generally upwards of 85 to 95%. Traditionally, these forms are used in a dab rig. A dab rig is a sort of modified bong which has either a titanium nail or a quartz banger on the end. Banger is basically just a bowl, which is heated up with traditionally with a butane torch. Then you take a metal tool, dab a little piece on, thus the name. It instantly vaporizes the concentrate, and then it's inhaled like a bong hit. It's basically doing a bong hit. Yeah. And it's a way of delivering a very high dose of cannabinoids in a single hit. What I always say, it's like smoking an entire joint in a single hit. Yeah. This is not. It's not for the faint of heart. I do not recommend any of these types of forms to first-time users. These can be especially useful for patients either who are in very severe pain and need a high dose, or have a very high tolerance. Yes.
Hello, I'm part of the 5%. Don't have a clue what you're talking about. Not a clue. And I don't think I have enough knowledge to ask a good question. Got the card about a month ago, went to the store, okay? Have no idea what to buy, what form or anything. Got a recommendation to get the vaporizer, okay?
You mean the cartridge?
Yeah, it's a little like... So anyway, instead of getting a euphoric effect from the THC or from the marijuana, it made me dizzy and dopey. So I don't like whatever the supposed good effect is, but I'm getting a little bit of healing on my neuropathy, nerve pain. So I'd like to get a product that has, if possible, no THC, which would be all CBD, but everybody seems to say that there's a good effect of the THC. You get more pain relief if you have some THC. And I'm not sure I believe that. But you can see my problem. I just want to buy a product that has as little THC effect, but has as much. And I can't double my doses now because that makes me more dizzy and more dopey. So I'm kind of a bind. So I don't know if you can understand anything from that question, but take a shot.
I think you could absolutely receive relief from a high quality pharmaceutical grade CBD without THC. I have a lot of patients that because not everybody can get a card at this point either. And, there's a lot of people that are the 5%. And even those that, are just afraid of it or just want to try something because we don't always want to experience a high or experience that feeling. I have quite a few people that receive extreme relief for neuropathy and chronic pain. And I work with a lot of chronic pain patients, strictly from CBD. Again, we go back to the quality where you're getting the CBD. You can always contact me, but it's the formulas we're using, and you start at a low dose. You'll never get high. You will feel pain relief, and you'll also feel, I explain it as like a euphoric feeling because it restores cell energy in the body, and it actually, reaches those cell receptors that where you're experiencing the trauma. So pain, neuropathy, numbness, tingling. And so it will restore the nervous system. So I absolutely, the answer, 100% believe that you can receive relief with just CBD. And I have people that, feel the same exact way. They want to be able to be in control, and some people don't tolerate THC as well. Another suggestion is to bring in a hybrid and to use CBD in conjunction with a THC product. But in your case, I would recommend, trying CBD strictly first, and receiving the benefits, because you do receive the benefits. It definitely has, medicinal healing properties. It definitely works. It is cannabis. It is hemp. It does work with the receptors.
Well, let's answer that question too, Dr. Rothschild.
Yeah.
Is THC by itself something that does relieve pain or needed for relieving the pain?
So it can relieve pain by itself. Needed, that's really a big question.
So that's up to debate.
So
he doesn't need to be two of the seven dwarfs, Dizzy and Dopey.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
To add to what Mandi said here is if you were my patient, what I would advise you to do would be start with some high quality CBD without any THC, gradually ramp up the dose, see if it helps you. If it helps you, and you're not going to get any of the adverse effects that you didn't like from the THC, then you've found your silver bullet or whatnot, whatever the proper term is. Magic bullet? Yeah, magic bullet. Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't recommend Coors Light as treatment for neuropathy, or even thirst for that matter. But and then if you've gotten to a high dose of CBD and if you find it doesn't work for you, then I would recommend going to a THC containing product, but one with a high or reasonably high CBD to THC ratio, something like. This I'd probably say something like a 5-to-1 or something like that, with maybe 2.5 milligrams of THC, somewhere around that level, and per dose, and see how that goes. There are many patients do get relief from just CBD, but there are many other patients who find that adding even just a little bit of THC to the CBD, it creates a synergistic effect where it's greater than the sum of its parts.
And the CBD can often bring down that high loopy feeling when it is a hybrid. It will, loopy. Yeah. It will ease that. So, and with CBD, when it is a high quality CBD, I really see that it gets stored in the body, and you don't always have to use a high dose, and you can start with a smaller dose, and you may need to rev it up at the beginning, but then you can, bring it down and maintain, because it does stay in your system. So at least those are my experiences with it.
That will do it for part 1 of Medical Marijuana for First-Time Users. Join us again next time for more with Dr. Rothschild and Mandi Babkes when we continue this series on the next Dispense Magazine podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is a production of Mindful Medicine, LLC.